I gave my son up for adoption at birth back in the 80s, and I want to talk about that today because I'm seeing so much on the news about adoption and abortion, and with everything that's going on right now, I want to tell you my story because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. What happened to me, I don't want happening to anybody else. And I'm hoping to make a difference. I'm hoping that somebody hears this and just makes a difference for women out there that have babies that they need to give up for adoption. I'm not here to tell you I'm for abortion, I'm against abortion. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm here to speak for the woman that is planning on giving a baby up for adoption, that is in a situation like maybe I was, that had to make a choice back then what to do with her life, what to do with her baby, what to do. Back in the 80s, well, and I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me because I don't feel sorry for me. I've been in contact with my son. I have a relationship now with my son that and his wife actually. A couple years ago, I was in contact with them, which I would love to tell that story too, which I may do that someday because it's just a neat story. Sometimes in life you make decisions, well, all the time. Every time you make a decision, there's a consequence to that, and this consequence I made for myself was life changing, and it's something that I had to live with my entire life. Not only that, it affected the decision that I made affected so many people. At the time, it affected so many people, and even to this current day, it has affected so many people. So I just want to tell you what happened to me. I ended up pregnant at the time, and I'm just going to tell you my personal story. I'm not going to tell you about nothing else, just my personal story with this. But I ended up pregnant at the time, and at the time I was going to a church that I had been going to since I've been 5 years old. 5 years old, I started going to this church, and I was very comfortable, and I was taught by many, many people in the church. And here I am I'm like 19 years old. So figure that out. I started when I was 5, and here I am 19, and I'm pregnant and not knowing what to do. The pastor was very involved with me at the time, helping me, counseling me along. And so were maybe a few, my cousin. That was it. Everybody else in the church kind of talked about me. I guess you could say it was the subject of gossip at the time. Michelle was pregnant. So my release is my piano, and I would go over to the church when the doors were closed. We had the keys and everything because we lived next door, and we were very involved with the church, very involved. So we had the keys, and I was able to go over in the day or whenever and just sit and play the piano. And for me, playing the piano is just my release, my talking with God. That's just I get so much out of just sitting and playing the piano and just thinking and talking to God. So, and I'm going to cry during this. And that's okay. That's okay. I was sitting there one day, and I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know an abortion wasn't even an option, but it was like, do I keep this baby? Do I give it up for adoption? What do I do? And the pastor came up, and he was talking to me, and he said, I have a friend in another church that out of state that has found this baby a home if you want to give it up for adoption. There's a family that we were told couldn't have children, and they just would love this baby. And it was in the same denomination, which made me feel good because it's like I would know that he would grow up like I did. I mean, I may have done wrong and ended up pregnant, but the moral and the base values that I received, he would have those. So we talked to my parents about that and everything, and it was a decision that I had to make. Am I going to give him to this family? Am I going to keep him? What am I going to do? And I knew if I kept him, there was going to be a safety level that just wasn't there for him. And I wanted him to be safe. I needed him to be safe. And I knew that if I kept him, he wouldn't be safe here. It just would be a bad situation. And there wouldn't be safety here for him for just a few reasons that I'm not even going to go into. So I was sitting at the piano one day, and I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm playing, and I sure wish I remember what song I was playing. And I knew at that time God spoke to me, and he said, give him to me. And I knew right then and there what that meant. I knew just giving him to God would be giving him up. So I sat and played, and I'm like, I'll do that, God. I will give him to you, and you decide what you need for his life. Holy cow, I didn't know I was going to cry through this whole thing. I've not talked about this much in my life. I've just not. It's just something that I haven't talked about, because just keep listening, because I don't want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. So I knew at the time that meant I was giving him to God, which meant I was going to give him to this family. I was going to give him to this family, and he was going to be raised in a Christian home, and I would be okay. I knew that I would be okay. So the time came, and we had to get an attorney because it was a private adoption. And we had to talk to the county, and we talked to social services in the county, and had to have their approval because he was going to be moved out of the county when he was born. So everything was good. Our attorney was good. Everything was good. About 2 weeks before I was to have a baby, the county director changed his mind out of the blue. He just changed his mind. Social services just changed his mind. And he said, if you're going to have a baby in this county, he has to stay in this county. I didn't want that. I didn't want that. And nobody ever talks about a woman that is giving up a baby. You hear about birth plans now, that husbands and wives or whatever, they have a birth plan and they have it all written out and they go to the hospital, and it doesn't usually happen that way. But sometimes it does. I would like to see that people that are giving a baby up for adoption have a birth plan, because I not even know I had a birth plan. And my birth plan was then interrupted. So it's like, now what? Now what do we do? Because I can't have this baby in this county. He can't stay here with me. For one, I didn't want to run into him on the street not knowing. I didn't want to spend my entire life thinking, is that him? Is that him? Maybe that's him. I didn't want accidentally to become his neighbor, because I'm giving him up for adoption, and that's kind of like an end for me. That's a closure for me, and I needed that closure, and I knew I wouldn't have that closure if he was stayed in this county. So we jumped through hoops. My attorney jumped through hoops. She did everything possible, calling the state he was going to, calling people in our area, and we finally found that she even offered to keep him. If he could be moved out of the county, I'll keep him here. You don't have to place him anywhere. My attorney was going to keep my baby for me, just so he could go to this home in another state. Well, they said no. They turned everything down, and they said, no, you can't have him. If you have this baby here, he has to stay here. I didn't want that to happen. So again, the attorneys were both attorneys at that end and this end, and everybody was doing everything they possibly could. And we found out that if I go to the state, if I travel to the state where I would leave him, he could stay there. So the arrangements were made, and a family from that church, there was a woman from that church, offered to keep me for a week while I had the baby. And I would stay with her and then have the baby and then leave. So I said, okay, I can do that. But I don't want to meet anybody else there. I don't want to see the pastor from the church. I don't want to see anybody else. I don't want to see the family. I don't want to meet them. I just, in my heart, want closure. And my closure is just leaving him there. And I know he's in God's hands because I gave him to God. I don't want to meet anybody. I don't want to nothing. I just want to go, have the baby, and come home. They said, okay, no problem. We could do that. Well, I travel over there. It was like 6 hours. And here I am, 9 months pregnant, traveling 6 hours. And it's like, I made it. It was okay. My mom and dad took me. God bless my parents. Because this affected them too, which I'll get into. So we get over there, and I meet the woman that I'm staying with, and she was the sweetest woman ever. The sweetest lady. My dad left, and my mom and I stayed with her. And she got us to the doctor, and she did all the running that we needed to do. And, I had to go have a doctor over there now. And I was able to just see the doctor, and he's like, we can induce you. Okay, good. So I go home, and wouldn't you know, the pastor from the church showed up. And I had asked, I don't want to see anybody. My birth plan was, I don't want to meet anybody. And he insisted that I drive around and see the area where he would go to school, where he would go to church, just where he would live, so he put me in a car against I didn't want to go. And what do you say? What do you do? They knew I didn't want to go, and he knew, but he's like, oh no, you need to do this. So I was driven around the town where he went, and I still remember being driven around. There's some things I've forgotten from this, but a lot of things I do remember, and a lot of things have come back. So like a day or two after that, because we're waiting for me to go in the hospital and be induced, the birth family, the family that was going to adopt him showed up at the house. And I just stayed in the bedroom and cried. I just remember crying because it's like nobody listened to me. Nobody did what I needed. And I don't want that to happen to anybody else ever. I want everybody to know and learn. You just know, if a woman's going to give up a baby for adoption, let her do it her way. Let her do it the way that she needs it, because she has closure. She needs the closure because this is hard. This is hard. So the family showed up, and I think my mom went out and met them. I didn't. I just couldn't. And I also just couldn't believe what was happening, And I know just at that point, sitting in the bedroom, I remember being angry and just thinking, I should just leave right now. I should just pick up and leave and just go home, because that's how I felt at that moment. I remember that plain as day. So that all happened, and that all took place. And just hear me, for anybody that is involved with a woman that's giving a baby up for adoption, let her do it her way. Let her have closure, because she needs that. So anyway, I remember going to the hospital and everything and giving birth to the baby. And I remember 12 hours I was in labor, and I remember not wanting to see him. I did sneak a peek of him, and I saw his hair. I saw that he had red hair, and I knew that. But other than that, I didn't want to see him. And they also didn't let my mom see him, and my mom wanted to see him. And I didn't know this at the time. But I don't know. I don't know what I would have done then. If my mom wanted to see him for closure, I think she should have. And I think the hospital should have let her do that. But I remember signing papers, and I remember just leaving the hospital. And I remember seeing this little boy. And come to find out that the family had another son, which I didn't, and it was their birth son, and which I didn't know about, which was okay. I was okay with that, because it's like, okay, cool, he has a brother. But I remember seeing this little boy peeking out from around. There was this big pillar as I was being wheeled out in the wheelchair. There was a little boy peeking out from around a pillar. And he was just a tiny little thing. And I remember seeing him, and I just thought, I think I needed to see that. I think that just brought me peace. I needed to see that. So as I get in the car, we travel a couple hours to my family, and I have a cousin's house, and we stayed there. But I want to tell you what happened when I got home. When I got back home, and I'm healing, and I'm starting to go to church again, and I just gave up a baby. And I'm going to church, and this is my home church that I have been there for years. Well, I knew I didn't feel comfortable going there, and I knew it was being talked about, and I knew because, whatever. But I remember one day there was a knock at the door, and it was the pastor from the church that had been counseling me all through this, and a board member. There was a board member with him. My mom sat on the board of the church at the time too. Here there was a secret board meeting, and my mother wasn't invited, but it was just a secret board meeting to see if I should be still allowed to go to church. And the board voted. The board voted me out of church. I got a letter, and they kicked me out of church. I, for one, was causing people to gossip. I was causing the gossip. I wasn't doing any gossiping. I wasn't talking to anybody. But everybody else around me was talking. So I was causing gossip in church, so they asked me to leave. And there were other girls, young teens, preteens growing up. They didn't want me to be the example for these teens because everything turned out so well for me. And since everything turned out so well for me, they didn't want me to influence any of the other young teens growing up in that church. So I was asked to leave the church. I was told to leave the church, actually. An official letter, leave the church. This church that I've known for all these years. So, that happened. So, here I am. What do you do? How do you process that? How do you process something like that? I didn't hate God. It was the people. And it's not even that I hated them. I just didn't want to be around any church people. And that went on in my life for 20 years. And my mom every once in a while would say, aren't you going to go to church anywhere? Nope. And I still, to this day, really don't go to church. And I would tell my mom, it's not that I love Jesus with all my heart. I gave my son to him. It's the people. It's the people. I don't want anybody ever to go through anything like I did. I don't want that. And it gets better. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. So then there's the county right to life and all of that. They contact me. And because they know what I went through and everybody. And they're starting a program for young women that are pregnant. And they want people that have been through a situation to come talk to them and tell them what they went through. And they asked me if I would come in and interview with the board, the panel, and see if I would be a fit for this. And I'm like, sure, I could do that. So I went in and I interviewed with the county right to life people. And they called me the next day and they said, we're sorry, you're not a fit for us. What? Things worked out too good for you. you're not a fit for us. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? I just couldn't believe I was turned down by them because things worked out too good for me. And I was turned down by my church. So I spent the next 20 years just kind of processing all of this myself. And it's like, I love Jesus with all my heart. It's people. It's the people. It's the people. I don't want anybody to go through this ever. And everything that's going on now in the world with the abortion and trying to take that away and everything else, what are you going to do for the woman? If you're going to take her right away, and I'm not saying I'm pro-life or pro-anything. That's not what I'm saying here. But if you're going to take a woman's right away, and if you're going to make a woman choose not to have an abortion because it's illegal, which is, I'm not saying I agree or disagree. That's not what I'm saying. So don't take it that way. What are you going to do for this woman? What are you going to do to her what happened to me? Or are you going to stand by this woman now that's going to have a choice to either keep this baby or give it up for adoption? What are you going to do for her? What's going to be done for her? Are you going to stand by this woman and love her unconditionally? Because God says, just love one another. Love unconditionally. What are you going to do for this woman? Because I wasn't loved unconditionally. They're not by the church, not by the Right to Life people, not by my family and friends, absolutely. But by people that held a position, I wasn't loved unconditionally. There was no support, there was no help, there was no nothing. And I want to see something being done now for a woman that was maybe in my position. And if you have gone through something that I have gone through and feel comfortable enough, tell me in the comments, because I want people to read my comments and I want people to know there's other people like me out there that were just kind of shoved to the side and said, figure it out yourself. Figure it out yourself. And I have. And it went a long time that I couldn't talk about this. And evidently, I still am emotional when I talk about this, even though my son is in my life now, and his wife, and I love them so much, and we are building a very good relationship. And it isn't a mom-son relationship because he has a mom. He has a mom that I appreciate so much, and a dad for raising him in a Christian home. And that taught him the morals and the values that I learned, because now I knew when I contacted him, because that's a whole other story that I'm going to tell someday. I'm going to tell that story. And he's okay. I have talked to him about this, and he's okay with me sharing. He is okay with me sharing as long as it can help somebody else. And that is what we both want. We want people to be helped. If you're going to take away something here and make a woman choose adoption or choose to keep a baby, help her. Help her. Don't turn her away. Help her. Give her the support as a group, as a community, as a person, as a neighbor, as a friend. Be there for her and help her, because she is going through something that affects her life. And it has affected my life, my parents' life. I have 3 other daughters. It has affected them. It's affected so many people. My decision. Just help her. And I hope I'm not rambling right now. I just want somebody out there to just be there for that woman that needs that help. Whether she be black. I'm a white girl. I'm a white girl and I was turned down. Whether she be black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Help her. Email me. I'll be there to support you, because I know how it feels. I know how it feels to give up a baby and be turned away by your church. All these friends that I had in the church. Just so many people. All right. I'm going to end the video here. Comment down below. Let me know your story. Read the comments. Just be there. Just be there for one another. Love unconditionally. God says love. Love unconditionally. I'm not seeing a lot of love out there right now. I'm just not. All right. I'll see you in my next video. Subscribe. Come back for more. I'm going to tell the story. I will see you in my next video. Bye.